culture.
There is an anxiety of business person to have control over things because by the end of the day, they have to make the business run, especially if they, and not only to make profit, which might be the main thing, but also to make the business run because they might have employees. And they have a responsibility over these employees, which is they have families, they have a living to make out of it, and so on. So this is where they might become more controlling.
Thank you.
Okay, I am under your guidance.
Let's not guide anything. I mean, we released the article about not controlling. So
Okay.
the main thing is basically what's at least what's I got an idea, and that's why I wrote the title of the article is that we're trying to play gods in business. We're trying to control everything. And what perspective is asked for us right now, and I'm sensing from you as well, is basically that we need to give the authority for the people. Is give stop controlling things and just observe what's happening, and then create the environments which allows us to transform ourselves. Not by controlling, but by providing an environment where we can control ourselves. I know, I'm not sure if you're getting the sense.
I might get into the sense, but listening to these words, what you're saying, which as a person I might be very in agreement with. When I listen to these words as an entrepreneur, I think there is much more concern. I mean, you're talking about environment and you're talking about control, okay? I think an entrepreneur is sort of needs to have a certain control over things, okay? Because there are outside third factors which he is not able to control. And I say he, she, okay, always, because I was reprimanded the other day. I was talking about businessman, because when I was a small child, I learned the word businessman, and I was reprimanded because I should talk about business person, okay? So, okay, I try to be politically correct while I'm talking. So there is an anxiety of business person to have control over things because by the end of the day, they have to make the business run, especially if they, and not only to make profit, which might be the main thing, but also to make the business run because they might have employees. And they have a responsibility over these employees, which is they have families, they have a living to make out of it, and so on. So this is where they might become more controlling, okay, over the situation, over the market, over the human resources they are working with, and so on. I think there is a certain aspect of an anxiety, and not only just the eagerness to make a lot of profit. Okay, I think that at least this would be my perception. I'm not just eager to make profit, actually, relatively, but definitely I'm eager that the people I'm engaging, I'm not dismissing them in 3 weeks because I don't have work anymore, because I don't have anything to offer. So this control, I think it's difficult to be taken off, okay? On the other hand, since Simona, you have mentioned the context, the environment, I think that's quite a challenging aspect because the context and environment is created by us, but at the same time, it is also created by policies, okay? We are talking about the macro system here. We are all part of a European Union, so we always look at what is the European Union doing in order to create an environment where even SMEs, businesses, can play an easier role, okay? I want to be also very polemic on a national level. I think every country is facing a paradox, which is the following, that the policies and the implementation of certain policies related to enterprises are done by public employees, by public authorities, who by definition understand less or care less about all the dynamics which businesses run into it, okay? It is a paradox. In order to decide policies for private enterprises, whether profit or no profit, we rely on people who have the least interest, paradoxical, or the least competencies.
Competence,
so.
that's the key word.
Competence, okay? The least competence. They don't care or they don't know. So just to make it very simple, okay? So that's why when we talk about the environment, the context, I think you are addressing something very fundamental, very, very key in this discussion. But who is creating the environment? A lot of factors, okay? Could be external factors, it could be the enterprises, it could be the market. The client is definitely creating the context. And who is managing this? But yes, I think policies can give a trend. Business owners can give a trend on that and make things even easier. Speaking up might be easier, might be a way to address a better environment. Maybe clients as well, okay?
I mean, I'm sensing that, you know, if the policies are kind of a way of restrict small businesses, I'm also sensing that this is the room for the collaboration, for the actual dialogue between those who has no competence, let's say, to understand the real situation of what the SME is experiencing right now, to have, like, you know, that dialogue with those who has actual practical experiences and competence to actually speak up. But to actually start that dialogue, the policymakers needs to be open for that. And I'm guessing that we are more and more becoming open for that. But we're still in our minds having this mindset that, you know, the governments usually just to try control us. And that's why with this podcast, what we're reaching out is just to reframe or rethink, redo the concepts, meanings we have right now. Because sometimes the practical sense, the practical, you know, vision is completely opposite than we actually have the concept meanings in our head. And you know, you're touching very good aspects, and you're going around with your practical knowledge. I think during this podcast we can discuss about the crisis and what we can do with the actual propositions. What, you know, that just the dialogue, just the, you know, the conversation, just to start. I'm not saying that we are gods, you know, we're gonna solve this, but is that the control is not, I'm saying that, you know, that we need to release everything and it's like human being, like, you know, to a meditation and all this. No, I'm not saying that. And I understand that, you know, the business has to have the structure, has to have like organization, and it has to have a certain sense of control over the situation. In what scale? It would be nice to have a conversation. What scale? Because in our head, sometimes that control is that control of over everything. Control the, you know, workers, control the situation. And sometimes the business people are so into the anxiety of over controlling everything that they has no understanding what they actually control over they need to be. And I think that this conversation with you, especially with your experience with the collaboration between, you know, different levels, different nationalities, different people, can show them that you don't need to be control over everything. It's just you need to be self-conscious of what actually you can be controlled over.
Yeah,
I'm seeing these two things, like, which we can.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I think dialogue is one key element in all this. Dialogue within the public and the private. I mean, I think where there has been shown success in regions all over Europe is where public and private institutions joined and energies and resources in order to make things work. Okay, So this way, enabling the public to do its job and enabling the private to do the market for exactly the same territory for the community. I think dialogue is fundamental, especially now in the period of crisis. I mean, if you look, let me give you a couple of examples. If you look at the crisis, companies mainly were looking at policymakers at the state, practically asking what? Asking support, financing, fundings, the availability to keep open, to keep going, so to keep doing their profit and their job, okay? Which is legitimate, I'm not criticizing it, but it was like a one-way we are demanding, okay? On the other hand, now after the crisis, or now that the crisis is at hopefully its end, now we have this big bulk of money from the European Union given to every country. My question is how each government sat down on a table with the representatives of the businesses to ask them which is the best way, and not just to address, you know, the immediate need of keep working, but how to address the development of the businesses due to the crisis, okay? So in both cases, I think dialogue was not very much enforced. And as I mentioned, dialogue implies talking, but also the ability to listen, to be receptive. And on the other hand, even on the policy level, it was like, we have the control over finances, we know best, we tell you, but with no concern at what is the step of development which we would like to reach with this big amount of money now, which is running. You know, no, everybody was eager to have a portion of this money, rather than really thinking, what is the development we have in mind? And this was also critical, because in many cases, governments realize that they don't have a vision. Okay, that is here and now, actually, okay, which kills then businesses, kills the market, because then you are exposed to third factors which might pump up suddenly and you are doomed, okay? And it's a loop, because then if the private companies, if the businesses don't run, don't tell me that the public can run, because the public is supported by the revenues of the businesses. So I think dialogue is quite actually important. Yeah, who is facilitating the dialogue? Who is helping for the negotiation? Because there are two different languages between public policy makers and businesses. Okay, I'm not saying one is right or one is wrong, because businesses, maybe they are too eager to, but I go back to what I said at the very beginning. They might also have an anxiety of, you know, making sure that their salary is granted for the next 20 years and the salary of their employees is granted for the next year. You know, they are running new products, new services, innovation whatsoever. If you don't do it, you're doomed. And this has to be understood by a policymaker as well, and favored by creating an environment which this is possible. Yeah.
Brigitta, do you see any kind of discourses which we can actually take with you in the podcast, like what we're discussing right now? Like,
well, everything what Alessandra was just saying, I think that I agree with everything, probably more than 100%, simply because I think that being, you know, on that side, let's say, of entrepreneurs and having a team and, you know, working during the crisis and, you know, all these things, I believe that this lack of, if we take this crisis period, that the lack of communication, the lack of dialogue, and this short-sightedness, you know, of policymakers, and at the time, you know, kind of distributing the money or that so-called help, you know, that, okay, now have it and we'll see what happens, etc., you know, and the business is taking it. And at the same time, now, when everything, as you said, hopefully is going to the better side, the businesses or business people, they're on this, so what do you want from us now? We have to return, we have to get back the money, and the policymakers are quite strict about it. But again, there's this clash because nobody ever elaborated any of these things before, because there was just a rush, kind of this quick kind of solution of the crisis at the time, but no dialogue, no speaking. So let's look at the long term, what we're going to do, how we're going to solve that, what we're going to have to do in order, to continue working, not only in this crisis period, but later, later on, how we're going to go back on track. So I agree with everything what Alessandra was saying. And I think that in this way, it's a super important podcast in a way, because I think that in all countries, we take Europe, we take the United States, anywhere, I think that the small businesses, they have been going through these things, and they need certain answers, they need certain support, questions. They have a lot of questions, and they don't understand what's happening, and they have no idea why these things are happening, and they're angry naturally, they're anxious, and and at the same time, policymakers, they're never into this kind of mode of talking or listening. It's not the case, at least, this is what people are usually experiencing. So I think that, speaking about this kind of, that we're eager to listen, we're eager to talk, but we just need to, find these kinds of points where we can start this dialogue and actually speaking up, and asking the questions, and asking, for the possible answers. I think yes, that we should definitely speak about this post-crisis situation that nobody thought about during the crisis, and now everyone is in this situation, and we have no idea what to do. It's probably even more difficult than it was during the crisis, this aftershock period. Feels like it.
And I also like that, that's what Alessandro is keep mentioning, that, there's different languages up here.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, and you also expressing, like, the business part is like, we're kind of angry about that. And it's just like, now we need to return, but policymakers kind of don't understand our situation. And this is also quite nice just to review this situation from the different point of views, and with Alessandro's like experience. How is actually those dialogues are happening right now is also could give us like, a very nice view. And then maybe next podcast, let's say, to invite, I don't know, the person from the educational part, like, because in from my field of science, anthropology, they are very into the policymakers like discussions. And it's like, it would be nice to bring the all us together into the discussion, as Alexandra mentioning, like, who's facilitating these discussions, like who's facilitating these, because I understand your side as a business, from the business point of view. I understand Alessandro point of view from the, also like, managing those, businesses, and also policymakers. So all these together, put it into one discussion, has to be, how to say, it's like,
bias, yeah, they can't be biased. They need to be objective.
Okay, well, now we are talking a little bit about public and private policymaker and entrepreneurs, as if they were opposite, okay, which is also running a risk. But on the other hand, in order to favor this dialogue, we should, for example, think that policymakers, public authorities, even public employees who then make technically some actions in order to facilitate SMEs to, to open a VAT number or whatsoever, should develop a bit more than what is real right now, an entrepreneurial mindset. It's a paradox, okay? But I'm quoting a research done not more than a couple of years ago by the European Union, which says exactly why should public employees develop an entrepreneurial mindset, okay? Not because they are going to open a company. Forget about it. That's not their vocation, respectively. But definitely to develop the skills of what usually is considered the skills of an entrepreneur, okay? Financial literacy, creativity, the ability of negotiate, looking forward for innovation, fixing value on what you are producing and whatsoever. So we have a list of 15 entry-comp skills which entrepreneurs should have, and if they don't have, they are taught how to acquire them. The idea is even public officers should a little bit have this mentality, okay? Because they are promoting a country, they are promoting a region, a municipality, a territory, and if they promote businesses, they promote the citizens. Because they create wellness and, you know, they create a famous environment, which we were talking about before. So this on the side of the, let's say, the public. On the other side, I think also entrepreneurs should be able to understand what it means to manage a country, to manage a municipality, you know, what policymakers do, okay? Which means putting into consideration, taking into consideration a lot of factors, a lot of drives, a lot of interests. And this sometimes is not achieved, is not acquired by business people, by business person, okay? They are a little bit focused, but they are focused more on their legitimate, on their market and so on. I think I'm an Italian, I think we had an excellent example how the entrepreneur, I'm not quoting him, who decided to become minister and governed Italy for 20 years was a complete disaster, okay? He treated the state, but according to a managerial approach, which was a typical profit managerial approach, doing a lot of things just for interest, but not for the common good, okay? So even entrepreneurs, even SMEs owner should in a way learn what are the issues of the common good, okay? Being an entrepreneur is not making your own business or not just your own business, is to consider that you are in a local condition, in a global condition. You contribute in a way to the development also of the local community, of the territory. You cannot just be focused on your business, though it is legitimate, okay? I need to make profit, I want a salary, I would give labor to people, I want to produce and offer myself. Absolutely fundamental. But on the other hand, exactly because an SME owner is living in a context, he should also be able to understand the mechanism, the procedure, the interests which the common good has, okay? And not just apply it as if the public, the national local community is an enterprise. It doesn't work. And we have seen many examples of that, okay?
So maybe we need to use not the mindsets as a concept itself, but learn different languages. You can speak your own language, which means like policymakers, you can speak your own language, but you need to understand our, like, you know, business language in order to make the right choices for all of us, kind of, you know.
And I like this sorry for interrupting, Simona, but I think that in this case, what I really enjoyed is that basically, I think that it seemed like common sense, but I've never kind of heard it, you know, spoken out loud, or at least I don't remember, but it's that, first of all, yes, it's that, you know, as Alessandro said, that business, that policymakers or these, you know, in the government, they should, you know, learn how to be entrepreneurs, the basic skills, not because they're going to become them, but because, you know, just for common good. And at the same time, when you said that, you know, it's all about the policymaker, the business people as well, they should kind of understand this, know this, or at least have this perception of how to rule a municipality or something bigger, because this is where we get the clash. Everyone is focused on their own garden and everyone is focused on what's happening there. So in this case, it's as Simona then finished, you know, by saying that it's all about learning another language. We learn another language, we can travel, you know, and speak to them and understand their mindset or something.
Travel their perspectives, yeah.
Yes, and as we know, a language is not a matter just of communicating. The language carries a culture, carries values.
Exactly, yes.
Yes.
Not just the words.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm.
Beautiful, amazing. I don't know. I mean, for me, is I think I'm not sure how you, Brigitte, is collecting all these ideas, and do you see the vision? Do you see, like, you know, where you can take the podcast? Because Alessandro, you and Brigitte are only going to be talking. I'm just here just to kind of put a bit of fire into the
Of spice
conversation.
and
Yeah.
Mhm.
But the main conversation is going to be between you and Brigitte. So
No, I'm enjoying, you know, just listening to you, Alessandro, and just listening to this fresh point of view. And I think that this is something that we can definitely work with. And I always appreciate and I always like something when we can learn from the speaker, first off. And the second thing is that you can actually get some hands-on experience. You know, this is something that you can immediately, you know, start, maybe not so tangible, but actually you can start thinking, or maybe, you know, working on yourself, because these are the things that you can do, you can use them. So I appreciate that a lot. And I think that we can definitely have a nice talk.